It's Thursday, June 27. You're watching the Rise News coming out of Nigeria's capital, Abuja, and this is Daybreak. Well, it's time for a paper review as promised, and we'll look at the front pages both locally and the international scene this morning. Our guest analyst for the day is Igor Aherega. He is a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors, although many years ago he was the deputy editor for the Guardian newspaper. Thank you so much, Igor, for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
So as we'll we'll look at the front pages and then we'll come back for analysis. Let's look at our sister publication this morning. It leads with a couple of stories there, but that from the CBN governor, Cardoso, who says Nigeria doesn't require funding support from IMF to close liquidity gap for now. I think that's for emphasis. He's saying for now, things seem to be great, and the liquidity gap isn't so much that it cannot get from other sources other than the IMF. Riders to that story says FX inflows hits $24 billion in Q1 of the year, declares recapitalization will boost banks' resilience, support for economy, voids price verification system for import and export transactions effective July 1. You have the leading photograph on the front page there, that of condolence visits from the president. The high-powered delegation was led by the Chief of Staff to the President, Femi Gbajabiamila, to the Vice President, Kashim Shettima, in Kano yesterday. You recall that the Vice President lost his mother-in-law on Sunday, and she was laid to rest on Monday. Well, in the yellow box of this day this morning, Rivers politics is not going anywhere. Fubara, Wike supporters tried to bomb hotel to justify state of emergency. Shames detractors as Kalu urges SCT minister to sheath sword, call his devotees to order. APC chief condemns guerrilla warfare in state. In the black strip there above the masthead, Kenya president backs down on tax hikes after 23 protesters die. And finally, on the front page this morning, NUPRC moves to optimize production of Nigeria's 1.6 billion barrels heavy crude reserves. Meet stakeholders on way forward, says only 5% currently developed. So, Mr. Aherega, back to you. The governor of Central Bank had this 20 to 30 minutes interview with Bloomberg, where he made some of these comments, including the liquidity gap, and saying that Nigeria does not need to go to the IMF for now. Your thoughts?
Well, I will agree with him partially, but when you look at what he's saying and you try to review all of the angles to his financial presumptions, basically it is hinged on diaspora remittances, which in Q1 of the year he's saying is about 24 billion. But if we are relying only on that, I also read a report not too long ago, I think day before yesterday, which says that there are also leakages. Some of the diaspora remittances to Nigeria also finds their way to, it is being externalized in such a way that not all of the funds come into the country. And he is also, I think there's also a policy proposal for, I think by the finance minister also, that diaspora remittances should now be paid in naira to the recipients, to beneficiaries. Well, how that will pan out is a bit, the atmosphere is confusing at the moment. But it's a good step for economic recovery. It's also an effort by the federal government, I'm sure at this point, to ignore some of the recommendations of the IMF, always saying that there are financial windows that are open for the country to, to explore, to get some funding. Already, most African countries, particularly Nigeria, is entrapped with international funding from the Bretton Woods, which comes with a whole lot of clauses that people have also said tends to enslave developing economies. So it is good that Cardoso is saying the right things to Nigerians. We just hope that this works out well for all.
All right, still on this day, this story on Fubara, fine, it's also on some other papers. We'll probably take that up in Punch if I get you to review that. But what interests me this morning on this day is the story on Kenyan president backing down on tax hikes, the financial bill, after 23 protesters die. He's refused to sign it. And then just below, you see ahead NEC, National Economic Council meeting today. Governors discuss minimum wage, council autonomy and taxes. Minimum wage seems to be under bedrocks for this administration. But democracy is termed to be government of the people, for the people, by the people. 23 people died, all right. But the president came to a place where he recognized that the people are his masters, actually. And so he called in that bill and said, no, I won't sign it. How do you relate this to where our leaders here in Nigeria handle issues when the people are saying, they may not have gone on protest on the street as saying, no, this will not all go well for the people of the country. Don't do it. Our leaders go ahead and do what they think is best for the people. How do you relate that?
What has happened in Kenya is just leads the way to what should happen in a decent democracy. The flip side of it is that William Ruto himself also waited a bit too long, waited for 23 of his citizens to be killed before he came to the realization that the supremacy of the sovereignty of the people is something that should be respected.
And again, I'm not stopping you. We'll continue. This also had to do with the IMF wanting Kenya to do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. As I said earlier, you know, the IMF is very consistent in breathing down the necks of African countries, particularly for African leaders who are unable to hold their own. William Ruto, yes, he has backed down, but of course you know what happened. The whole crisis in Kenya started with social media mobilization by the youths in Kenya. When they saw that the president was defiant and had moved the bill to the parliament for assent, Kenyan youths, the protesters, also warned the parliament that they must not assent to the. We are even talking about just a 3%, hike. That is what, because William Ruto is talking about. The Kenyan economy is doing well, far better than that of Nigeria by all standards, you know. But the William Ruto says he needs some more funds to provide social services, to build some infrastructure and embark on development projects. But that does not resonate well with the people. And Kenya, you said, no, you don't have to do this. The parliamentarians, just as it is with most African democracies, usually they work in cahoot with the president, with the executive, as we have in Nigeria here, where you saw the last parliament in Nigeria led by Ahmad Lawan, who actually brazenly told Nigerians that whatever former President Buhari brings to the table, they are going to sign on to it. And we saw where that led us. In 8 years, it was a brutal repression of people, and the economy nosedived. We moved from the #1 economy in Africa in 2015 to the backwater, and now we're about #4. So the Kenyan crisis is a good example that I think people should follow. It's a good example that President Bola Tinubu should follow. People say Tinubu listens, but the listenership level of President Tinubu, for me, has not produced the positive results that can transform the lives of Nigerians. What has happened in Kenya, as I say, it's a people-driven protest. The police, the security forces also, they've not done very well. I read the report of a policeman whose younger brother died in the protest, draped in the Kenyan flag. He felt he has offered to voluntarily resign from the Kenyan police, in protest by the killing of his younger brother. So what that tells you is that if you are firing live bullets, you don't know who is going to hit. If you throw a stone in the market, it could just end up hitting your father, your mother, your sister, or somebody. So that's a lesson to us in Nigeria also, that we need to exercise restraint, particularly on the part of the security forces. Citizens have a right to protest. Citizens have a right to agitate, also to question government reforms. What we are doing in Nigeria is all like a sweeping. There's no resistance anymore. Whatever the government lays on the table, it just goes through. And then they tell Nigerians to tighten their belts. Whilst the executive, we've not seen any evidence that they are tightening their belt. So these are the challenges in terms of comparison between Nigeria and Kenya. I think Kenya is just leading in the right way. We need to copy a few things from them.
And let me just add that,
of course, the government.
As you're talking, that the president also, for good measure, because I listened to him very well, he said, now we're going to look in what? cut our expenses, the executive, what the nation spent. He said that.
Yes, I agree.
So many lessons to take away from Kenya. We do hope that this placates the citizens of the country who have vowed to now move beyond touching the National Assembly to move into the State House. That's the presidential villa. However, the president has spoken to the people. We'll keep an eye on Kenya. Unfortunately, 23 people's lives had to be cut.
They paid the ultimate price for this.
For Kenya to get to this. When you have tone-deaf leaders in power, and that's what happened. But now the Kenya government knows that they can be held accountable for their decisions by their people. Let's stay with this day front page, Mr. Aheriga, the Rivers crisis. Now, the claim that supporters of Governor Wike attempted to bomb a hotel in the state to justify a state of emergency is a serious allegation and accusation coming from the governor. I think it requires thorough investigation, one that is impartial and comprehensive. But what do you have to say to this? Rivers has gotten to this state where we now have a bomber, or an alleged bomber, who appeared in the hospital with injuries and claimed they were from an accident. But the medical staff from our reporter on ground, the medical people on ground were very attentive to note that the injury was not relatable to that from an accident, but from a blast. What's your take on Rivers at the moment?
Well, the Rivers crisis is dragging unnecessarily. It is dragging because, for me, clearly there is complicity at the federal level. Otherwise, why would the Constitution is very clear. Sim Fubara is the governor of Rivers State. I cannot understand why there are precedents in not only Rivers, across the states, other states in Nigeria, where the governors, set up caretaker committee for a period of time, and then that provides the window for them to conduct proper elections into the local government. So Sim Fubara is not doing anything, even though the issue of caretaker arrangement is not in the Constitution, but it has become something that is maybe doctrine of necessity for most of the state governors. They do it. So why is Sim Fubara's case different? So that is one. The issue of the 23 or so lawmakers who came out to the open to tell every Nigerian, everybody, that they have moved officially from the PDP to the APC, because their principal, or that is Minister of the FCT, Wike, Nyesom Wike, they are loyal to him. And the Constitution is absolutely very clear on that. Literally, even for literary interpretation, you don't need any legal luminary to interpret the Constitution to tell you that, look, once you defect from one political party to another, you automatically lose your seat. And since last year that all of this is playing out, up to about early last month, where the matters went forth and back from the courts, I must also say that the judiciary have not really helped matters with all of the confusing judgments and interpretation they are giving to it. But I think where we are now is that every Nigerian must queue behind Governor Sim Fubara. Democracy is at stake here. We are just talking about Kenya, what has happened in Kenya. These kind of things do not happen even in other African countries, not Ghana, not Kenya, not anywhere. Why is it that we try, to rub it on the faces of Nigerians that our own model of democracy is different from other countries? We have enough laws in our Constitution. It is the will, the political will, to follow through on or to obey the laws. That is our challenge. The Rivers crisis, okay, now the police has declared one. As I watched that video, somebody who identified himself as General Gabriel, who said this from the defunct movement for the emancipation of the Niger Delta, and that he was calling out his 10,000 soldiers in Rivers State to escort the caretaker committee chairman to the council. Now you can see that the crisis is deepening. The police has declared him wanted. If we had simply allowed the governor, to govern the state peacefully, Wike has done his bit. It's now in the FCT. Why will Wike have one leg in the PDP, the other leg in the APC, and the president is tolerating it?
But
for me, that is unfair.
When people call for the intervention of the president, How about the PDP? Have you heard so much the PDP doing anything about this matter? Or are they doing enough? Sim Fubara is the governor of the PDP in Rivers State. The FCT minister, Nyesom Wike, the former governor, has not declared his decamping to APC. He has not declared he has left the PDP. So as far as we are concerned, they are both still members of the PDP. How about the internal democracy and internal mechanisms of the party? Have you seen that work?
The courts, we can approach the court, to restrain the PDP from removing him as a member of the PDP. And curiously, the court, gave judgment in his favor. So
he's still a member of the PDP.
So he's a member of the PDP as it is. But from his body language, from his activities, his pronouncement, everything, he's in the APC. So. But he has a legal backing to be in the PDP. So that is where the cul-de-sac is. And then you look at what has happened with the bombing, the alleged bombing of the presidential hotel in Port Harcourt, when the Senate committee on one of the Senate committees
privatization and commercialization
led by Ojus Okalu was visiting. I think all of that was to create the impression that the state is unsafe, that there are serious security issues in the state, to lend credence to those who are calling for a state of emergency in the state. But that is only going to exacerbate and create a complex situation for almost everyone. We have the situation unfolding in Kanu, now we have Rivers State that is intractable. For me, I just think that it is unnecessary distraction. The governor has a job to do. He should be allowed to face
his job.
The governance of Rivers State.
Incidentally, before I look at Punch, you mentioned judiciary. A group of 60, called G60, of lawmakers at the House of Reps, their spokesperson is Ugochinyere, what was his first name? Ugochinyere Ikenga. He says that the judiciary, the Federal High Court, the courts of the land, should be on the alert, that the local government chairmen who were sacked have an intention of using an ex parte motion to stop the funds of local government. What do you make of that?
Well, that is also trying to deepen the crisis from the perspective that, they want to create a state of anarchy for Governor Fubara. This is where the judiciary comes in, all right? If indeed that is true, and the former local government chairman, they have served 3 years. The constitution is very clear. They swear to an oath that they will do 3 years in office. Now, the whole argument about the State House of Assembly purportedly extended their tenure for 6 months or so. It is illegal. It's ab initio illegal, because the Constitution is if the Constitution provides for 3-year tenure for local government chairmen, and then a State House of Assembly, in an obnoxious and vexatious manner, then extends the tenure to 6 months. The Constitution is very clear. To the extent of that conflict with constitutional provision, the Constitution takes precedence. So I do not understand why all of this is being dragged forth and back. Right. And the police that is occupying the Secretariat appears to be lending credence, leaning towards the former local government chairman and Wike himself. And that is why the allegation is not even an allegation, because it's becoming obvious. If the Commissioner of Police, Tunde Disu, in Rivers State, can be so quick to declare the Gabriel whatever wanted, where were the police when somebody was detonating an explosive in a very sensitive edifice or infrastructure, as the presidential hotel? It's one of the best hotels in Rivers State.
It's just heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking that when you look at all of this, we're not even in an election year. This is just 1 year into Fubara's tenure. And for the people of Rivers State, security, stability, and continued delivery of good governance is priority for them, and not all of this. So Rivers politicians, political elites need to get their act right and in order. Let's move on to the next paper.
Let's look at the Punch. All right. The Punch has some interesting stories. Dangote refinery, crude supply crisis threatens oil investments. Operators warn FG. FG urged to deepen investors' confidence. Dangote allays fears over the refinery fire. Tinubu backs NDLEA to end drug abuse and trafficking. And then you have 423 billion naira theft. El Rufai sues Kaduna Assembly, challenges probe. Stress test on banks necessitated a recapitalization. This is coming from the CBN government asked to meet to avert strike in varsities, and FD banks begin talks on nationwide broadband rollout. But the Dangote refinery story and El Rufai story. Now, last time we discussed this, we looked at 4 fronts. The Dangote, the regulatory agency, NMDPRA, then you have the international oil companies, and then one other aspect. Here, the LCCI Chamber of Commerce is saying that there's a blackmail against the IOCs. Dangote is, of course, laying its own claim, but they're particularly saying that what is happening here, if not checked by the FG, will affect investments in this sector. What is your, and of course the fact that Dangote said it's been brought under control, then probably when you finish that, we'll look at El Rufai. He's saying that he was not given fair hearing. His fundamental human rights was breached. So he's taking the National Assembly of Kaduna.
The State Assembly.
State Assembly, rather, to court. You know, Ego.
Well, we'll start from, you know, the forth and back between Dangote, and now the new mix is the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry that has come in to say, that there's the IOCs, the international oil companies, are being blackmailed. Now, who is blackmailing the international oil companies? Is it Dangote? From what, you know, interpretatively, if you look at what the LCCI said, then it is Dangote that has made a statement directly accusing the IOCs of some kind of conspiracy to deny crude supply to its refineries. Again, and then he also said that clearly that there is a cartel in the oil and gas industry that appears to be determining, you know, the flow of crude, even determining the prices of the sector. Well, I would prefer to take Dangote more seriously than the LCCI. What the LCCI is saying will look like a group of people that are procured to counter Dangote. Dangote, for me, with all good intents and purposes, has put billions and billions of dollars to put to establish that refinery, with the hope that, seeing the suffering of Nigeria, also seeing the supply gap which he intended to fill by establishing that refinery. I thought that the federal government was going to be very enthusiastic. I also know that the NNPC has, I think, about 20% investment stake in the refinery. So I do not know why the NNPC would prefer to give import licenses to petroleum marketers to bring in refined products rather than fast-tracking a process of supplying enough crude to the Dangote refinery, except the NNPC and individuals within that system has personal benefits from the system. Otherwise, with regards to patriotism and with regards to all hands being on deck to grow our economy, I should think that the priority should be given to Dangote refinery for crude supply, adequate and enough crude supply to run that refinery. Now we can also see why our own local refineries are not working, the ones owned by government. It is now also very clear that even government itself will probably be the one sabotaging their own refineries from working, so that, to create enough ground for the cartel to continue to benefit. But if that is how we want to run the country, I think that most Nigerians this morning, watching us and listening to us, are not going to be impressed. When Tinubu was coming to government, he said he was prepared to deal with all of the issues. And he talked about renewed hope agenda. Renewed hope would suggest that the 8 years of former President Buhari was a complete disaster, was a waste. And so he was trying to build fresh hope in Nigeria. But his trajectory so far has not been encouraging. I would expect the federal government using NUPRIC and all of the other agencies that are regulatory agencies within the oil and gas sector to move in and deal with the allegations that Dangote has raised, rather than raising people to speak against very serious issues that Dangote has raised. As we speak, Nigeria is underproducing. OPEC
Can't meet OPEC quota.
2 million. We can't even meet it. We are doing 1.4 and 1.3.
On a good day.
Almost akin to what we do in electricity. We're doing 5,000 megawatts when we do 4.5, so 4.5 4,500 megawatts. When we add 100 megawatts, the government goes to celebrate that we have done so much. So this is the, I think, is the failure and the gap that we have in the system. And we need to, governance is a serious business, and people who have been elected or who find their way into positions of authority must not, should not undermine Nigerians. These are very serious issues that can affect the lives of people.
The El-Rufai story.
Yeah, the El-Rufai story, I find it very interesting. When El-Rufai at some point was an octopus in Nigerian politics. He was bestriding everywhere. Kaduna was not even enough for him. He was all over Abuja. And he was very influential under the Buhari administration. And now it is coming out. It is a lesson to political office holders that whilst you are there, a day will come that you also have to give account for your stewardship. Now the Kaduna State House of Assembly is saying that El-Rufai has misappropriated 435 billion. That is a whopping sum of money. Well, he has seen a lacuna there and say, oh, I didn't have fair hearing. But when he saw that, even if invitation was not extended to him, if I were El-Rufai, and I know that I'm on trial at the State House of Assembly, I'll make myself available. I'll go in there to say, what are your records?
He wasn't invited.
He wasn't invited.
No, he was saying, no, but you can go in there.
No, but
you can ask your lawyers to write to them that you want to go in there and defend yourself. No, but you can't try me in absentia. Now that he has been indicted, he's saying, oh, he has gone to court now to approve. Well, we'll see how this pans out. Let the court decide. Yeah, I'm sure that the court might, without prejudging the outcome of the court, they might rule in his favor, because issues of fundamental rights are very, they are serious, they are critical issues that, you know, the Nigerian judicial system frowns at.
And
if he's not invited, then of course,
he
should be given fair hearing to defend himself.
Indeed, and we hope that all of this is not just politics, but to unravel what has happened during his administration. Yeah. Where the money went to, did the money leave at all, and all of that. So fingers crossed on Kaduna State. I think this is what they say is turn by turn. When you say everybody was everywhere, was the octopus of politics during Buhari administration. It's turn by turn. Well, let's turn now to The Guardian, where you once were, Mr. Akerega.
Yep.
They are leading with something very crucial this morning, away from politics and partly economy. I say bottom line here is the economy. The high cost of care hits public hospital uninsured patients. So they say they've gone around some hospitals in the country, and the catchphrase, the first thing caregivers tell patients who come to the hospital is deposit first. And they're saying this is becoming crucial because when you look at the economic situation in the country, and even those who are still struggling to get a living wage go to the hospital, they cannot afford to have cash deposit first before they access care. Mr. Akerega, what do you have to say to this?
Well, that is a good investigative report by The Guardian. The Guardian that is one of the strongest area of The Guardian, and backing on investigative reports that directly touch on the lives of the people. So this is another good one coming from them this morning. I'm sure every Nigerian has a personal experience with our healthcare system. I remember those days when the military would jump at stations to announce schools. They would say, oh, the hospitals have become mere consulting clinics. So between then and now, do we now have hospitals who you can walk in and then expect to get good quality health care at affordable cost? Now we have the National Health Insurance Scheme.
What has happened to that? What's the coverage of our National Health Insurance scheme?
No. Even here it says over 90% of Nigerians still have no health insurance.
There's no. It's dismal.
It is just not there. It is just not there, and that is what brings me to the issue of the national minimum wage. Why do Nigerian workers and workers everywhere in the world, why do they ask for wage increase? To pay for basic access to basic things, healthcare, education, food, shelter. Those are the things that the Nigerian workers
transport.
Exactly. So if, for example, the federal government or even the state government, we have the PHCs, the primary health centers, and then you have the teaching hospitals where you can be referred to for more comprehensive health check and all of that. All of these are missing. The average Nigerian cannot access If you go to the primary health centers, of course, you won't even get paracetamol there. They just put the stethoscope on you, so you probably having a headache or a fever, and they ask you to go to the hospital and take care of yourself. So there is no attention to quality healthcare at any level in Nigeria. And if you don't also, the healthcare now has been overpriced such that only the novel rich, those who really have money, that can access good healthcare. The health insurance scheme has broken down. Our mounted allegiance to the universal health suffrage, which Nigerians are supposed, which the country is supposed to key into and provide affordable and accessible healthcare to all Nigerians. I mean, that has all fizzled out. Nobody's even talking about it. So that report by the Guardian this morning is spot on.
When you say everything has hit the roof, this is just one part. Everything in Nigeria has, in fact, I think they are breaking the roof. It's going over the roof. We'll take a breather, but when we come back, what is the nexus between Northeast home to more than 2 million uneducated children, says UNICEF, and insecurity, when we know that the North is where insecurity really breeds? We'll be back in a bit, and you will look at that. Don't go away. All right, glad to have you back. You're still watching Daybreak here on Arise News. It's coming to you live from our studios in Abuja. And we're looking at the papers, both local and international. In a while, we'll go international. But Igor Karaga, member of the Guild of Editors, former deputy editor of Guardian newspapers, is still here with us. And before we took that breath, we talked about Northeast, more than 2 million uneducated children, says UNICEF. And I was thinking, Igor, what was the nexus between...
What paper?
It's Guardian, between this humongous figure in education and insecurity.
Well, clearly it's an issue of social disconnect, between those who are responsible for looking after those children. 2 million, that's what UNICEF is saying. But we also know that there's a report that says that about 10 million northern youths, are out of school and they are not catered for. They just fend for themselves. They are let loose, like loose cannon on society. We see some of them in Abuja. There's a clear connection between this huge number of youths. Usually I see them from ages, you see some as young as 7, 8 years, 10 years, then to about 16, 17, years. And that is a standing army that can be recruited by any mischievous group or mischievous individual. You also know that the North is rife with insecurity. You have Boko Haram, you have banditry, kidnapping is also rife, and you have ISIS, West Africa, or how they call it. So the entire northern region is almost embedded in some kind of crisis that is becoming also very complex to deal with. So if the government, I recall that the administration of former President Goodluck Jonathan, tried to deal with the issue by setting up the Amajiri schools in the north, where I visited that of Kano, somewhere in Katsina, when I was still at the Guardian, and you could see the quality facility that the federal government at the time provided for those schools. They were fed 3 times a day, and then they had access to both Islamic education and Western education. And it was progressing. But once Jonathan left in 2015, all of those lofty policy initiatives were swept under. And I've heard arguments by some northern intellectuals and, of course, their intelligentsia arguing that these children or these numbers of people, 2 million, 10 million that are roaming the street, that is part of northern culture. So, but how does that, we can see that, yes, if you say it is part of the culture and tradition of the North, but we can also see relatively that there's a spike in insecurity in the North. And reports and studies have shown that there is a clear nexus between these individuals, these young people, who are not catered for, who have no hope, as it were, with insecurity because they become a ready army that can be recruited, offered some money, and then they take up arms against their own country.
Well, another
so the government has to deal with it.
Indeed. Another nexus that is undeniable is the one between insecurity and drug abuse. And yesterday, as we know, was the International Day Against Drug Abuse. The Daily Independent this morning is leading with that story. The Daily Independent, Tinubu vows to sustain war against drug, illicit substances. Drug test kits is a must for homes, schools, and offices, according to the NDLEA boss, Buba Marwa. But there's another story there. Let's quickly run through some of the stories on the front page there. Tinubu not working against the interest of North, says Shetima. Lagos proactive steps averted catastrophic outcome in cholera outbreak. That's according to Governor Sanwo-Olu of Lagos State. AMCON's conflicting profit report cause for worry. Dangote says fire at refinery won't affect operations, and that's good news. $1 trillion economy. NGX unveils e-offering platform in readiness for banks recapitalization. El Rufai sues Kaduna Assembly over 432 billion naira probe report. Army deploys 177 personnel to Guinea-Bissau for peacekeeping. An explosion at hotel ploy to foil state of emergency, says Fubara. Only government policies can enhance access to quality medicine, says Peter Obi. So let's start with the comments from Vice President Shetima yesterday. And you may want to touch on the drug war in Nigeria as the lead story of the Daily Independent, if you wish. But the Vice President yesterday was responding to this rhetoric and narrative that has been in the politics for a bit now, that the North, with the visit to former President Buhari by Atiku, Tambuwa, and a couple of people recently, that narrative has been pushed that 2027, the Northerners are pushing for Tinubu to be out of office and not return, and all of that narrative, I'm sure you're aware of it. And now the Vice President yesterday, who received a delegation from the President on condolence visit in Kano, says that the President is not working against the North, and he is citing appointments by the President, including the 2 defense ministers that we have are from the North. He says the Chief of Defense Staff, the Chairman of the Police Service Commission, and a host of others are from the North. And so why would he be working against the North if he's appointing key people into his cabinet from the region? Your comments.
Well, it's interesting that the North has found its voice now. When we talk about the North, who are these Northerners that are talking? You know, is it the same individuals that have been involved in one form of governance or the other for more than close to 100 years? And if you look at the development index in the North, is it anything to really show? Is it anything to encourage anybody, any serious person in the North to listen to these same individuals? For 8 years, Muhammadu Buhari was in power, and we saw what he did with power. We saw where he led the country. It's the same Northerners, you know, during the campaigns, working with some other Southern APC members, told everyone that Buhari was the right man for the job, that, you know, in terms of security, was going to deal with it, in terms of the economy, was going to fix it. For corruption, he's an incorruptible person. Buhari was not going to be corrupt. But 8 years after he left, 8 years of his governance, and just barely a year and a few months after he left power, we can see so many things coming out. What the malfeasance of that administration. We have seen Tinubu's ministers blaming the Buhari administration for putting the country in a mess. Now, all of the 8 years, we didn't see these individuals in the North who are complaining now that Tinubu, you know, is working against it. No, they didn't speak up. They didn't even speak to put pressure on Buhari to do things for the North. The home state of Buhari, Katsina State, as we speak, you know, is almost in the hands of terrorists. Zamfara is almost in the hands of terrorists. So the governors of those states are, of course, incredibly struggling day and night to try and contain the ravaging scourge of bandits and terrorists in their states. That was what was inherited by the current administration. And who bequeathed this legacy, this unfortunate legacy? It is also somebody from the North. So I will speak directly to some of these individuals who every time a Satsana, you know, comes into office, you see them making, these are worn out, old-fashioned comments coming from the individuals in the North who feels that they've lost out government. As Vice President Shettima rightly said, if you look at the current configuration of appointments by Tinubu, you know, it even favors it not. How many Southeasterners, how many Igbos are in the government? In fact, it's almost a sharing game between the Southwest and the North. You know, the Niger Delta region, where I come from, is shortchanged. The Southeast is shortchanged. But these regions are not complaining. They're just moving on with life and hoping that at some point the government will get it right. So why is it that the North is like a baby with a huge feeding bottle in his mouth, with a bloated stomach, having been overfed, kept crying that they need more and that they have been shortchanged? I think this is just unfair, you know, to the president. The president needs more time to work, as far as I'm concerned. After when Buhari was there, people said, the PDP destroyed Nigeria. 15 years of PDP government destroyed Nigeria, and that Buhari needed time to work. Buhari, you know, then ran the country for 8 years. And rather than improving on what he inherited from the PDP, we saw where we are now with the exchange rates, food prices, you know, and so many other things. So I think that it is just too early for these characters in the North to complain. And you look at the Police Service Commission, which I think Daily Independent reported it. Yeah. The president removed, you know, somebody from the South. That is Solomon Arase, as chairman of the Police Service Commission, and replaced him with Northland for no just cause, for no reason. The man was trying to clean up the place. The same government says that embarking on police reform, all right, and Solomon Arase, everybody knows he's a man with very credible records. He holds a PhD, and he got in touch with JAM. Look, we need 10,000 recruits. The Supreme Court gave a judgment, took it away from the police, gave recruitment powers to the Police Service Commission. And the man says, look, let us have an organized system of recruiting credible police officers for the police force. And he conducted the exam. JAMB released results, and there's some individuals who felt that it should be business as usual. The old way said they discredited the outcome, and apparently went behind the scene to lobby. And the president bowed to them, kowtowed to them, and removed a man that is committed to doing things properly and rightly. So these are the issues. This is part of the problem that confounds, you know, that complicates, you know, our development process in the country.
The Vice President Shettima, I think one of the papers has said that the president is not against the North. He is for the North. We're going to go on a break and come back for international papers. Daily Graphic has on its front page, MPP running mate Matthew Opoku Prempeh, the energy minister, is the chosen one for MPP. 7.3 million Ghanaians, multi-dimensionally poor, GSS report. Parliament ratifies Ghana bauxite companies mining lease. And just below there, you have malaria-related deaths reduced drastically. We'll get back and we'll look at this and other international newspapers. Don't go away.
Welcome back. You're watching Daybreak, and it's the paper review here on the show. Joining us once more is Igo Aheriga, a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors and one-time deputy editor of the Guardian newspapers. Aheriga, thank you so much for staying with us. Well, before we went on that break, we're switching to the international scene. The Daily Graphic is from Ghana. And we do know that the Ghanaian presidential election is coming up December 7, 2024, to elect a president. It's going to be a two-horse race from what analysts have seen on ground. And it's going to be between the current vice president, Muhammadu Bawumia, of the ruling New Patriotic Party, who is the presidential candidate for the party, and former President John Mahama of the Opposition National Democratic Congress, the NDC. Bawumia has now chosen his running mate, who is the current energy minister. There were a lot of candidates, but the energy minister edged them all out. Bawumia has now consulted with Nana Akufo-Addo and made this known to him. It will now be formally made known to the party and then to the people. But here we have it. Ghana elections, expectations. It's interesting that the energy minister is being picked by the ruling party, considering that at the moment they also have power cuts issues in the country. Wonder if that was a smart move. Well,
it's interesting. If you look, Ghana is just a neighbor to Nigeria. And Politics are not wide apart. The kind of politics we play in Nigeria is almost akin to what really happens in Ghana. It's just that the only difference, what I see in Ghana most times, is that it is not as hotly contested in terms of violence, in terms of voter apathy, violence that treats the election, ballot buses snatching and all of that. In Ghana, those reports are really, really minimal. But back to the elections, the energy minister, at a time that Ghana is also now witnessing power outages, don't forget, Ghana is now an oil-producing nation too. Sometimes I wonder, when oil is found in any country, that is when they begin to have problems. Ghana was fairly stable before oil was discovered, before international oil companies moved in, like vultures. They were always swam in. And once they swam in, they also have a way of trying to determine the political direction of the countries where these, I call them the golden oil is found. So for Bohemia of the ruling party, Matthew, all of them that are in the race now, it is for the Ghanaians to look at what is really on ground in terms of the current government. What that the government offered? What Ghana also went to the IMF to
yes, they are dealing with IMF bailouts as well.
IMF, you know, IMF, and they are asking for a loan at a point that a lot of investors even moved from Nigeria to Ghana. You know, I know of companies that have divested from Nigeria, and then they moved to Ghana. But Ghanaians are not impressed with what is happening, that their own economy too has been thoroughly mismanaged. So it is going to be, the voter consideration is basically going to be around the issues of, you know, access to food, quality life,
inflation.
Power, inflation, ability or capacity to manage the rising inflation, just as we have in Nigeria. Nigeria is at 3.64%, also climbing. So issues of livelihood, issues of national economy is going to dominate, you know, the consideration for where voters will eventually put their ballot.
All right.
6 months from now.
Let's go to Daily Mail. Election in Ghana, December, but just a little less than 2 weeks. Is it up to 2 weeks? We'll have the one in
July 4th.
July 4th in Britain. Rishi's furious blast at Stammer. You're taking people for fools. Let me just read part of what Rishi says. PM said Labour would make Britain the soft touch of Europe on immigration by scrapping the Rwanda deportation scheme. He's just lashing out and saying that voters should be careful of Labour, but what the polls hold is that Labour is leading. And then there, of course, you see Phil Foden, the England star. He just had to go home, but he's back for Slovakia in the 16 knockout stage. His wife just had a baby. There you see him, the wife, Rebecca, and Ronnie, and True, the daughter. What do you make of those two stories, briefly?
Well, it's interesting. If you look at what is going to play out in British polls, Keir Starmer is talking very tough. He's the candidate of the leader of the Labour Party. He has promised. Basically, the core issues that Starmer is raising is issues of corruption, issues of mismanagement of the British economy, and basically sleaze. He referred to the days of Boris Johnson during COVID-19, and that Boris Johnson was parting away when other Britons were actually observing COVID-19 protocols. And so these are issues. And then for Rishi Sunak, part of what Starmer is accusing Rishi Sunak of, that is just continuing with the legacies, some kind of profligacy, you know, of the Conservative, the Tories. And the Labour Party is coming to do things differently. They were going to look at tax reforms. They are going to make life a bit more easy for Britons. At a time, just like you said, barely 2 weeks from now, the polls will hold. And the rating of the Tories now is very, very low. So it was an opportunity. If you look at their debate, Starmer and Rishi Sunak, the debate was neither here nor there. It is almost like a brick bat, akin to what happens in Nigeria when we have a debate, where you just throw brick bat at each other, try to rub your opponent on the mud. But it's a bit unfortunate for me that Britain, which is an old democracy, is almost like the American election, looking like they've got to a point of diminishing returns. they got to their peak, and it appears they are sliding down in terms of the rhetoric, the political rhetoric is coming from both sides. And of course, it will not be, since Sunak came, you could see a bit of stability. He brought a bit of stability to governance, whether anyone likes it or not. For me, that is what I see. He brought a bit of stability, he has brought a bit of charisma. You look at the position of Britain with the Russia-Ukraine war, it has been quite stable. Nobody, Starmer is not really speaking directly. There's also fear that if Labour Party comes to power in Britain, they might want to pull a bit backwards from their support for Ukraine. And Britain, US, and their allies, they have said that they have an ironclad support for Britain, Israel, and all of that. These are
basically
conflict areas across the country, across the world, sorry.
Basically undoing what the Conservatives have done in the past years, what Labour is promising to do. And during the debate, analysts will say Keir Starmer didn't provide enough answers to alternatives, and you can find that on the front page of the Daily Express this morning and other papers. But this is where we call it a wrap. Igor, thank you so much. Time flies, they say. Absolutely. But it's been a fantastic 1 hour review of the papers from around the world this morning with you. We do appreciate your time. Igor Akerega is a member of the Nigerian Guild of Editors. And that's a wrap for Daybreak. Thanks so much for watching. Up next is The Morning Show. I am Adesua Omorwan.
And I am Ndi Amugo, thanking you for watching.